Hi, Dr. R. Scott Thornton here, author of Inclusive Christianity, asking the question today, is there a place for religion in politics? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask most evangelicals, they would certainly say yes. On the other hand, if you ask an atheist, he would say absolutely not. Many people feel that faith is private, something that is just between you and God. But that does not appear to be God's intention. From the Hebrew prophets, through John the Baptist, through Jesus, through Paul and other apostles, God clearly demonstrates his desire to have his vision for humanity be central in our public consciousness. Moses spoke out against the oppressive imperial regime of Egypt. The prophets decried the exploitation of the poor at the hands of the monarchs of Israel and Judah. Both John the Baptist and Jesus denounced the oppression and marginalization of people that took place under the Romans, King Herod, and the temple elite. They made it perfectly clear that God's vision for humanity differed from the reality that surrounded them. As Christians, we like to say that we are disciples of Jesus. If so, then we need to be the standard bearers for the disenfranchised of our world, and yes, that has political implications. The founders of our nation placed a separation of church and state into the Constitution, and this is essential if we are to avoid a theocracy, if we are to remain free, a free and democratic nation. This does not mean, however, that our founders envisioned an absence of spiritual and moral values within the public arena. Indeed, such values are central to our national identity. Social reformation movements, like the abolition of slavery and the civil rights movement of the 60s, emerged from a central conviction that all humans are equally beloved by God. Jesus clearly spoke against the injustice he saw in the economic and political systems of his day that oppressed people. In fact, his attempts to deconstruct this systemic injustice is what ultimately led to his crucifixion. Jesus clearly had a bias for the weak and poor, those marginalized by society. He opens his ministry by proclaiming, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor." In his Sermon on the Mount, he states, "Blessed are the poor." Many of his parables, such as the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, have to do with teaching us the importance of providing for those around us. Jesus was passionate in communicating a message that everybody should have enough. Not necessarily the same, but everyone should have enough. Enough food, enough clothing, enough shelter. He taught that God's grace and love extends to everyone, even those people who were felt to be untouchable at the time or incorrigible. In his parable of the workers in the vineyard, Jesus shows us that God views each and every one of us as equally precious. He reveals in his parable of the Last Judgment and parable of the Good Samaritan how God might judge us. He will assess us on the basis of how we treat the weak and vulnerable among us. This must be reflected in our politics. This must be reflected in our economic systems. In his parable of the rich fool, Jesus makes it clear that we are to share our resources with others. Jesus knew that the ultimate destiny of humanity is dependent on how well we are able to elevate the lowest among us, to elevate those marginalized by society. If we truly want to call ourselves disciples of Jesus, then we need to stand for social justice, and we need to communicate this to our legislators, and we need to look for this in our legislation. Decisions regarding war and peace are also religious. Gandhi once said, in fact, that the only people in the world that seem to realize that not to realize that Jesus was a pacifist are Christians. Jesus was clearly for peace and nonviolence. In his Sermon on the Mount, we hear him say, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Later, when teaching about love, he says, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Much to the chagrin of the zealots around him, he never once incited insurrection against the Romans. Now, it's hard to know how we should apply Jesus' words when faced with terrorism or a truly evil dictator, or a country practicing overt genocide. And clearly there are times when civilized nations must band together to intervene in order to save lives. I've looked at these issues in other pieces. I have a video on war and peace and one on God's love in the face of terrorism that you can check out. The point I'll make here, however, is that if we look at Jesus and the way he dealt with the tyranny in his time, our first impulse should be for peacemaking, not war. The most obvious way this can be achieved is to have a generous and compassionate attitude toward countries that are not as well off as we are. When we decide to hoard our wealth, it provides an opportunity for radical groups to capture the hearts of a country's populace. Now, many politicians draw their religious line in the sand, if you will, over issues like abortion and homosexuality, two issues that Jesus never, I repeat, never spoke about. God's vision for humanity is clearly delineated through Jesus' messages, and that is to fill the world with love, compassion, generosity, forgiveness, and peace. These are the line in the sand issues for Jesus. It is a vision for healing, a vision where all people are equally precious. When the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the U.S. hold 40% of the total wealth, we must ask, where is the compassion? When 45 million people have no health insurance, we must ask, where is the healing? When our urban children are undereducated and their parents are undertrained, we must ask, where is the equality? It's time for us to stop asking whether God is on our side and to start asking, are we on God's side, as given to us by Jesus? In summary, I feel that it is truly the case that religion can play a part in politics. Just not bad religion, not inauthentic religion. There's no place for a religion that is judgmental. There is no place for a religion that is exclusive. There is no place for a religion that primarily focuses on issues that weren't central to Jesus. There is no place for a religion of aggression and violence. There is no place for a religion that thinks it's okay for the rich to excel while the poor languish. If you are going to call yourself a Christian, and if you are going to speak out in the public arena, at least speak toward the issues that were critically important to Jesus. Again, those are love, compassion, forgiveness, generosity, and peace. These are the central tenets of our faith and the central tenets of all major faiths. If we remain true to these basic precepts, then the world could indeed become the kingdom of God. Thank you.